Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor. Hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy. In the Dome against the Carolina Panthers, Luke Johnson with us every single Thursday via the Jim's Firearms Hotline. He covers the New Orleans Saints for The Advocate. Luke, how we doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It is our pleasure. Some personnel news over the last 24 hours. The Saints added a playmaker, and then we're told they didn't. What happened there with the failed physical?
That was like just a bizarre moment from Dennis Allen's press conference. They're like, so what about your new kick returner? And he was like, we waived him. Failed physical designation. So, it's like, hello, goodbye. Figure something else out. Just a really weird situation. We didn't see running back Jordan Mims at practice today. And a lot of us thought maybe he was like cut to make room for this guy, and then someone was like, no, he's actually on the roster. And it feels like there's maybe some weird stuff going on behind the scenes there. As things stand right now, Jordan Mims is on the roster. Kene Nwangwu is not, and they only have one All-Pro returner on their team instead of two.
All right, we'll talk a little bit about that. The other one is a local story here. Is Austin Deculus, former Tiger that played more games than anyone in the history of the uniform, added to the Saints. Can you tell us there?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was cut last year by the Houston Texans, and was a really popular player on waivers. I think a couple teams put in waiver claims on him, and the Jets ended up getting him. Then he never played for the Jets, and he didn't make the team out of training camp this year. So I think he's still an interesting player. Obviously, like when you're talking about somebody who has 47 career starts in the SEC, played for obviously a very successful LSU program and won a national title while he was there. There's something there, and he kind of fits their size profile: 6'5", 320 pounds. And they've obviously got some issues to tackle. I mean, I think it's a little bit more interesting than the typical, sign an offensive lineman in the practice squad type of story. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's always good to have another former Tiger on the team.
Cutdown day is always just an absolute blur as the moves just come fast and furious, and y'all were all over it there, reporting as they happened. Was there anything that happened on Cutdown day that really surprised you?
Really surprised? I would say not. There were some mild surprises, like Jonathan Abram. He was a guy who, the very first day of training camp, he's a starting safety next to Tyrann Mathieu, and by the end of it, he's not on the active roster. Yeah, that was a surprise. I think Ugo Amadi is kind of a similar situation where he's a player who gave him flexibility at both safety and nickel if they needed it, and he's also a capable punt returner. So it was a little surprising to see both of those guys released, even though it's like a little less surprising because they're veterans and they don't have to go through waivers, and there could be an agreement beforehand, like, hey, we'll bring you back if you're open to it. And both of them ended up making their way back to the practice squad. I think as far as guys who actually made the 53, the most surprising one to me was Mason Tipton, the undrafted rookie free agent receiver out of Yale. He was awesome for the first 2 weeks of camp, like just blowing by guys, really good deep speed, made consistent plays every day. And then he injured his hamstring, and we never saw him play a single snap in the preseason. So it just felt like if they would have kept him, it would have been a really tough choice based on projection of 2 weeks of training camp. But they did, and they could have, I think, pretty easily cut him and reasonably expected him to clear waivers, just because they're the only team that saw. And as much as teams actually read beat writers' reports, which I know to be true, they're not out there like putting in waiver claims on a guy to put on their 53-man roster because some beat writer is like, yeah, this guy looks really good. I think they could have snuck him onto the practice squad if they wanted to, but the fact that they didn't means that maybe they have like a role envisioned for him. I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see how that one plays out.
It's interesting. They made a trade for defensive tackle John Ridgeway. Why, and what can you tell us about him?
Well, I think that one is based purely on the fact that Colin Saunders is dealing with a calf injury, and as we've seen with Nick Saldiveri, sometimes those take time to recover from. And I think there's a very realistic possibility that he misses at least a week, if not more, of the season. So you're talking about like a pick swap, like a late round pick swap. They traded a 6th, they got a player and a 7th back, and they've got a guy who is capable of filling in as a run stuffing player as needed. They're going to have 4 defensive tackles active on game day. 2 of them you can reasonably consider to be Brian Brzee and Nathan Shepard, and then not Colin Saunders, but Christian Boyd, their rookie 6th-round pick out of Northern Iowa. I think has had a pretty impressive camp as like a run stuffer type of player. So they just needed a 4th with Colin Saunders probably being out, and that kind of explains why he's there. And we'll see what he does in the opportunity that he gets.
Now let's throw it basically way back in NFL terms at this point to the preseason game on Sunday. A lot of guys that were making plays in that game are no longer with the Saints. That's just the way that the preseason finale generally goes. But anything that you drew from Sunday's game?
I actually came away from that thinking that there's legitimately a chance that if Derek Carr goes down this year, we'll see Spencer Rattler in there. I think throughout camp, I've just felt like Jake Haener made a lot more sense as a number 2 this year, just because I think he's a smart player. He knows how to play within the offense. You know that like if you're going to put him in there, like he's not going to mess anything up. But I just think that after watching, we've seen Jake for 6 preseason games. I think over 2 years, we've seen Spencer for 3. And I think the potential right now feels a little bit higher for Spencer Rattler. The gameplay just hasn't matched the practice play for Jake Haener, and that's probably a little unfair of me to say, just because it's a completely different situation going into a preseason game and switching out every other quarter, or kind of not knowing exactly when you're going to go in and you're not a starter. And it's a different situation than if you're preparing and game planning throughout the week. But I was really impressed with what Spencer Rattler did, and I think I'd feel a lot more comfortable now with him as the number 2 quarterback than I did before Sunday's game against the Titans.
All right, Luke Johnson's our guest from The Advocate, with us every single Thursday on the Jim's Farms Hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at @ByLukeJohnson. I guess kind of last type things before we get into game week next week. Injury concerns for starters that you've seen the last couple of days. Is anybody back to practicing? I mean, how close are they to being healthy for Carolina?
Yeah, well, I think the big news was that Marshon Lattimore, it's like as soon as training camp ends, he's back out there on the practice field. Make that what you want to make, but good that he's back out there, right? He missed most, if not all, of training camp. I mean, he's only out there for like 4 or 5 practices. So that's good. Rashid Shaheed was back out there, also good. I think when you're looking at starting caliber players, players who the team was definitely going to be counting on to play a lot of snaps for him, I think the only one who you really considering as a possibility of missing week 1 is Colin Saunders. And that's good. I mean, this team dealt with like a lot of weird soft tissue injuries throughout camp. I mean, there's moments and I was like writing up the practice reports. I'm like, there's 20 players who aren't here.
Yeah.
I think they're in a good spot health wise before the start of the season. And if Colin Saunders is the player you're missing, I mean, like you're going to miss him, but like, you'd much rather be missing him than somebody like Shaheed or Lattimore.
The Tigers going to get it done on Sunday?
Come on, man. Of course they are. I'm all aboard the nuts bus, man. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I don't feel as confidently as I did about him as I did Jaden going into last season, but I feel pretty good about it. And I think just judging off of what my group text of your and I's old college buddies say, they're very excited to see a defense that's not coordinated by Matt House. So we'll see what happens. I'm feeling good about it, though.
Gil found a way to pout anyway, so we'll just that's
Come on.
That's inevitable.
He's going to send you some really questionable text messages.
All right, man. Enjoy your last Sunday off for a while, and we'll talk next week.
Sounds good, man. See you soon.
Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.